Fans of the Dragon Age franchise are sure to return to Dragon Age Origins game for a healthy kick of nostalgia. Even today, its fans consider the first installment their favorite in the series, thanks to its dry, quick-witted humor, character development, and gripping storyline. In this video, we're taking things up a notch to discover 15 hidden Easter eggs in Dragon Age Origins. Let's get started. First up, it's the origin story of Thedas. We bet you didn't know that the name Dragon Age actually comes from the BioWare forums. Incidentally, before the name of this fictional land was even released to the public, fans would simply refer to it as the DAS, an acronym for the Dragon Age setting. Once the game was eventually released, that's exactly what it became, Thedas. This feels like a nod of respect to the fans who supported the developers right from the beginning of the franchise. It's kind of a cool thing to do to recognize your supporters and acknowledge them for always being there. Up next, the Towers of Hanoi. If you're familiar with BioWare, you'd know they love to slip simple board games into their video games, and Dragon Age Origins is no different. It has one called the Towers of Hanoi. Essentially, the player needs to move circular discs in piles across 3 towers so that they end up being sorted from the smallest to the largest. It's been seen in Mass Effect a couple of times, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, and even during Dragon Age Inquisition. You thought you could get away, but the tower always finds you. Now, Edwina the Mage. If you remember the game Baldur's Gate 2, something BioWare worked on before they made Dragon Age, a powerful and intelligent mage named Edwin is turned into a woman at the end while trying to access magical powers and secrets. Well, we're glad to tell you guys that you can now see her again because she appears in Dragon Age Origins as well. In this game, Edwina is a bartender at the Nod Noble Tavern in Denerim. She's also wearing a red dress, which is similar to the red robes donned by the original Edwin in Baldur's Gate. Moving on to Thedas' Superman. Dragon Age Origins also includes random encounters that you could come across as you journey through Thedas. When the blood trail on the map is interrupted by a symbol of 2 crossed swords, that means you're about to happen on a random chance encounter. In one scene, you'd come across an elderly couple, John and Marta, who are staring off into a massive hole in the earth, conversing about something that fell from the sky and left a child at the bottom. The couple then chooses to take the boy home and raise him as their own. If you haven't guessed by now, it's a direct reference to the origin story of Superman. Now, the bartender's mess. Plenty of people are familiar with the nod to Star Wars A New Hope at the end of Dragon Age Origins, when you save the Queen Enora, and on unlocking her cell door, she says, "You're a little short for a guard," just like when Leia said the same to Luke when they met. But what you might not know is that this incident is more than just a subtle callback. Earlier in the game, when you leave the tutorial and reach Lothering, you can go inside a local tavern, where you meet Liliana. You'll be attacked as soon as you go inside, but after you talk to the barkeep, you can choose to say, "Sorry about the mess." This was originally said by Han Solo after he killed Greedo to the barkeep. Let's talk about the Mass Effect elevator rides. If you've played Mass Effect, you'd be very familiar with its long, ongoing, infamous elevator rides, which then hid loading screens in Dragon Age Origins. When you come across the Dead Trenches, which is a fortress in the deep roads, you'll see a codex entry which is titled, "Wait for it, load limit reached." The first line reads, "Mass will have an effect," further solidifying the reference to BioWare's sci-fi role-playing game. Coming up, the reference to Jane Austen. For those with a keen eye, you won't miss the codex entry which contains another Easter egg. Found during the Magi origin or at Mage Asunder at the Fade, the History of Circle contains some unique text. It starts with the line, "It's a truth universally acknowledged," which if you're an avid reader, you'd know that it's from Jane Austen's infamous novel Pride and Prejudice. The tone, the feel, and the spirit mimic Austen's writing to a T. It's sarcastic, formal, and witty, making that connection with the author even stronger. Mary Kirby and Cheryl Chee, writers of Dragon Age Origins, were both huge fans of Jane Austen. Now, some giant rats. After fighting a giant rat while hunting a pet Mabari hound, Sir Gilmore comments that every tale his grandfather told him when he was a boy began with rats. This is a not-so-subtle jab at most RPG games, including some BioWare ones, which start by pitting players against rats. Even Elder Scrolls fans will remember this. Let's discuss the Ring of the Warrior. Lord of the Rings has been instrumental in influencing the fantasy genre in the Western world, and BioWare tips its hat to them by including references in Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Origins, and Dragon Age Inquisition. One of the references in the Origins series comes in the shape of a ring called the Ring of the Warrior. It's found in various places in the game, and its description shows that the golden ring is covered in an elven script. Whatever the writing says, it's awfully wordy. This seems to be a jab taken at Tolkien for his heavy style of word-heavy writing. Up next, the references to the Princess Bride. Another reference that's hidden in multiple places in Dragon Age Origins is the Princess Bride ones, and one of the absolute fan favorites is the one found at the end of the game. During the Landsmeet, when you're sent to the Arl of Denerim's estate in order to rescue Queen Enora, upon trying to leave the estate, a loyal soldier will rally all the guards together and try to stop you. While there are a bunch of ways a player can get out of such a situation, one of the most aggressive ways is through the following response: death first, which is exactly what Wesley shouts at Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. Not to mention, cake is lie. At the end of the Dragon Age game, usually Finally, there's an epilogue where you celebrate your victories and talk to different companions and hear their thoughts. At the end of Origins, though, this happens in the throne room of Denerim. In this room, Sten is definitely the odd one out, surrounded by humans, and when you talk to him, he'll point out that he thought there would be cake. Sten then goes on to say that cake is a lie. Some would instantly know that this is a reference to the Portal franchise. In those games, Gladys keeps promising to give you a cake if you do as she says, but never ends up actually giving it to you. Next up, Liliana and Sarah Williams. During an encounter against multiple demons and mages in Ferelden's Circle of Magi, you'll come across one memorable creature, a sloth demon, who puts you and your companions to sleep. If you're lucky enough to have Liliana in your party when you face this creature, she murmurs, "You have no power over me." Movie fans might recognize this as the classic line said by Sarah Williams, the protagonist of the hit film Labyrinth. Sarah and Liliana do share quite some similar character traits, and both eventually come to terms with their own innocence. Now, is Arl Eamon on Weight Watchers? Did you know that lovable Arl Eamon, who is also Alistair's father figure, is actually self-conscious about his weight? Yep, we're as shocked as you are. And before you ask how we know that, let us enlighten you. When you look around Arl Eamon's house, you'll see a recipe for fluffy mackerel pudding. While the recipe sounds horrible, it is in fact a recipe that was created by the infamous weight loss organization Weight Watchers. Poor Arl Eamon, we feel you. Moving on to what would Jesus do? If you were under the perception that chantry is actually inspired by the modern-day Christian church, then you're not too far from the truth. When you enter Denerim's chantry, you'll chance upon Mother Perpetual and Sister Theohild having a conversation. If you listen closely, you'll see Theohild ask, "What would Endras do?" This is also a reference to a Christian motto from the 1890s, revived later in the 90s to, did you guess it? What would Jesus do? Pretty cool in our opinion. Wrapping up with some Spidey sense. During the character creations, Origins lets you choose from a number of voices that your character can use in combat. If you choose experienced or wise, you might hear the warden say, "Warden sense tingling." Spidey senses anyone? That's a wrap for this video. Do you have any thoughts about these young musicians with massive success? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.